The Roman Forum has a long history, and it wasn't pre-designed from the beginning like the Imperial Forum spaces. Instead, it develops organically over time and will change and be modified century by century by century. When we look at the beginning, we're talking about a marshy lowland area between two major hills, the Capitoline Hill and the Palatine Hill. And it's this area that will begin to be drained already as early as the 7th century BC. And most of that activity is then attributed to the early kings of Rome. But already in Roman tradition, you have stories that associate the rule of Romulus and battles that he fought against neighboring villages to begin to expand his city of Rome, already started on the Palatine Hill. Essentially, the Roman Forum is a basin, so you have most of the early occupation on the shelves on either side, on the slopes of the Capitoline Hill and on the slopes of the Palatine Hill. And at the bottom of those two hills, you have natural springs, and that made it an ideal place to exploit, to occupy, and to use and inhabit. The Romans ultimately want a place to hang out, and they can't do it up on their hills. They have to come down below and exchange ideas and goods and trade and convene. And they do it in the low-lying areas. But if they're wet and swampy, you need to drain them out. And that's exactly what the Romans do. And ultimately, the Cloaca Maxima is constructed as early as the Regal period, but it's an open ditch. But with the passing of time, it will go underground as the city of Rome rises artificially higher and higher. Essential activities take place in the Forum Piazza itself, sometimes used for gatherings and elections or debates. You have on one side the Curia, which will have different manifestations over the centuries. The last standing structure that we have today is the Curia Julia, so it's attributed to Julius Caesar and Augustus, but what you see is a rebuilding after a fire in the 3rd century AD. There are earlier versions of the Curia where the Senate could convene, going all the way back into the Archaic period. When we look at earliest Rome, what kind of ancient monuments can we look at? What they're not so big and they're not so monumental. On one end, we can look at the House of the Kings, the Regia. We can look at the Temple of Vesta and the House of the Vestal Virgins, which were rebuilt over and over again so that what you see today is of imperial times. But beneath that, you have earlier versions going all the way back to the Regal period. You have the Lacus Curtius, which was a place for extracting water. You have the Lacus Uterni as well, another spring. So you have a lot of abundant natural water sources right in the heart of the Forum. You have the Mundus, attributed to Romulus. And you have the shrine to Janus, attributed to the second king, Numa. So many details, many stories, many activities are associated with some of these early shrines. You even have the lapis niger, the black stone, which is associated with possibly the apotheosis, or the rising up of the ruler and king Romulus into heaven right in front of the Curia.